Hey everybody, it's Bruno. Here's my new episode of MB. Be my next guest on MB by clicking on the link below and we'll contact you. So listen, enjoy the episode.
That's right. What's up, you sucker?
This program is NB, so it's David NB, and we kind of a tagline, it can't all be serious, but the one part I'm going to say that's serious is that you reached out from Australia and asked to learn more about the program and behavior. And I got to give you not because it's my program, it's our program with Drew, but it takes most people aren't attracted to hockey for the finesse part of the game or the coaching. It's just about, I remember early days in the US, Southern US, they'd always talk about fighting, I went to a boxing match and a hockey game broke out, So I was quite impressed, and I thought, I'm going to be honest with you, David. Really, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
I thought somebody was pulling my leg when you first called me a couple of years ago. Okay. You're like, I'm Dave, and then, Australian hockey, and I love your HOF program. I'm like, yeah, okay, who's pulling this stunt, right? And I was over the top impressed with, because you're a lot younger than I am, understanding that really is probably more important, and I'm being kind of working without net, probably more important than technical, because technical, there are a lot of technical people, but it's really hard to convince somebody at an early age to say, the behavioral part I think is more important anyways. But I was blown away that you would call me and want to incorporate that in your NSA Hockey program and understand the importance of it. So is there a specific instance or time in your life you say, you know what, this is why it's necessary?
Well, I guess I think back for how I got into the game, and I've enjoyed my whole hockey career, so to speak, but my first kind of 3-5 years into the sport were just so enjoyable, and I could never get enough of it. And I would kind of be at home the night before we played, repacking my gear, and it was like Christmas morning every game day. And thinking back to the coaches I had, it's all positive memories and experiences. But thinking those first kind of 3 to 5 years, if I could recall any tactics, I can't. It was all just about being around the team, having the jersey. And we practiced a lot and we played a lot, but it was all positive memories, but not one of them was negative or tactical. So it's really important. I grew up, it was just my mom at home, my mom and my brother and sister. And yeah, hockey just gave me kind of an extended family. As I said, some great coaches, but it's all about the communication, how they made me feel. Like I said, I put the equipment on, I went out there, I felt like the Michelin Man. I could just crash into anything. But I just couldn't get enough of it. So now I'm coaching and working with a lot of kids. You're always thinking back in your own journey, right? And how can I recreate what I felt? And our memory is always foggy. So in just doing research of that, it's like, hey, how can I get these kids to come back and keep wanting to miss it when they're not at the rink as much as I did? And it's less about what forecheck we're running, or what our power play looks like. It's just about making the rink a fun place, and getting them better. I didn't really get better at practice, I don't think, and not to rip any of the coaches, but I just wanted to be there so bad. Even on non-practice days, I'd get down to the rink and burn around at public skate sessions. And you'd steal your buddy's hat and he was chasing, and all of a sudden I'm doing tight turns and mohawk pivots just to get away from him. And that's kind of where I got better. So I just wanted coaches to really be conscious of that, of how can we get the kids back in the rink and staying in the game for life, so that we see them at the other end of our programs in the recreational leagues that we run. Because to me, that's a win, regardless of how high they get as far as level, how long they can stay in the game. That's how kind of we determine success.
So I know this is kind of an unfair question, but major difference between Canadian and Australian hockey players?
Well, the number of them, really. Like, we have a lot of barriers to entry here, just not a lot of rinks, expensive, right? You got to get the gear. There's not a lot of kind of hand-me-down gear around because not as many adults play. But the game here, as far as hockey players and the way they play the game, I would say it's less structured, and there's ups and downsides to that. It's players struggle to be as tactical because they're a little looser with their structure at the grassroots level. But what's cool is that there's no preconceived ideas. You'll see a team on the penalty kill and they're going full court press, trying to score goals. Whereas in Canada, everyone watches it on TV. They've watched their parents play. They know, penalty kill, we sit back. So I find in Canada the game is very kind of dictated on just tradition. This is what we do in this situation. Where in Australia, if you tell kids that they're down 3 against 5 and they better sit back and defend, they're like, why? Puck's there, let's go.
Yeah.
So
Isn't that refreshing? Isn't that a little refreshing?
It is refreshing and frustrating at times, but overall it is refreshing because you're just seeing them create. And I've learned from them as a coach on, wow, that's a good play, passing right in front of your own net.
Yeah.
As we go through hockey, that's a no-no. But all of a sudden, these kids, they don't have that fear of that's a no-no, and now that's a good outlet pass. D to D right in front of the goalie, or center out on a breakout right in front of our own net, and we're away.
Well, you've been super gracious to ask me about coaching and all that kind of stuff. And again, on this series, MB, we like to have a little bit of fun. So I'm going to share an interesting story with you. Is about not a story of philosophy, I guess. And I used to tell coaches, and they kind of go, they bench a player for putting the puck in front of the ice, or when you clear the zone or something. Yeah. You know way more hockey than I ever will. But you're clearing the zone, but you never clear it. You got to clear it off the boards.
Yeah.
Right? Not straight up the middle from your red line or something like that. And then all of a sudden, the magic happens and it gets through everybody and it's a big breakaway and they score the game-winning goal. And the coach goes, don't do that next time. I'm like, well, if it was such a no-no, why don't you go to the scorekeeper and say, can you take it off the board?
Yeah.
Right? No, nobody wants to do that, but you don't penalize the player when they score or something happens. And guess what? Maybe sometimes the wrong tactical play will win you the game. And you're right, you don't get that in the structure of hockey because you get benched. But I guess the kids down there just kind of don't know it, so they don't know any better, and they see a net, and that's where they have to go, right?
Totally. Yeah, they're just no preconceived ideas. They're just taking what's there and they're figuring it out on the fly.
How about goaltenders? How do they figure that out? What do they look like?
To be honest, the kids who don't want to skate kind of gravitate there. But yeah, goaltending is probably a bit of a weak spot. Now, we have some phenomenal goalies, but again, it's just numbers, right? It's getting a goalie. A lot of goalies here, if they do take up the position, there's a lot of opportunity for them to get extra practice or to play up or sometimes even play down because we're short of goalies. But overall, I think as a country, we're probably making the biggest strides in that area. Ice Hockey Australia have some great goaltending coaches working with them. We actually have the same lady, Sarah, working with us at NSA, doing some on and off ice sessions. So we're set up in the right direction, but talk about barriers of entry, goalie equipment, even more expensive than hockey equipment. So if you're a parent of a young player, one, just to put them in the game and to get the full feeling of it with all the equipment, you're probably outlaying close to $1,000. If you want to put them in goal and get them the full experience of that with the goalie gear, it's even higher. And that's a lot of money to risk if the kid may try it for a season, a term, and think, nah, not for me. And now you're stuck with all this gear and a very small market to sell it in second.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. It's not like you can put it on classified. Just the shipping to Canada will cost you $100 million. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It's interesting. Now, just change the pace. I mean, what other North American sports? They play baseball in Australia too, don't they?
Yeah, baseball, softball is pretty big in Australia. It's still a kind of a minority sport, but I would say it's bigger than hockey by far. Yeah. Oh,
baseball is, hey? Wow. So in terms of what you do over at NSA right now, what portion, because you only have one sheet of ice and it goes from what, 6 in the morning till midnight or something?
5 in the morning till near midnight.
And so what portion of it is, 5 to 12 and, the adult, because you have adult guys, adult leagues going on there.
Yeah, a lot of adult leagues, and there's a lot of people trying to get ice. So, hockey, figure skating, but also a lot of the hours here have to be dedicated to public skate sessions. Like on a weekend, most of the day, or a big chunk of the middle of the day, is kind of a 3 to a 4 hour public skate session, because people, there's no outdoor rinks to skate on here, right? So you might get a few hundred people on the ice, not now with COVID, but in general, a few hundred people on the ice just public skating, and that's a lot of revenue for the rink. So between that and then hockey and figure skating, there's a lot of people fighting for ice. So out of the hockey that we have here, I would say more hours are in the adult recreational side, just because there's more numbers there. But the priority of ice, so those good hours, go to the kids, which is where it needs to go. So kind of kids are getting into hockey. Probably the earliest we'd see is about 6 years old. We have a U9 program here in Newcastle and a U11 program that's all in-house. The young stars here with the North Stars Hockey Club, they work out of the rink, and then our Learn to Play program, we'll take them at any age. That's kind of, 6 and above. So, once you get after U11, there's 2-year increments up until they're adults. And our recreational league is 14 and above. So we kind of cover every age group from years old, I'd say.
So some of your best players, they come to Canada. What level can they play?
Well, our best player has made it to the NHL, Nathan Walker, won a Stanley Cup with the Washington Capitals, and he's the only Australian player to ever play in the NHL or even be drafted. So overall, though, a lot of players will go and play junior hockey. Some are playing NCAA Division I, but we're probably talking kind of less than 5. But a lot of kids do go overseas and play in hockey academies or for their school team, school academies, AA, AAA. And if they're really good, they'll get into a junior program where it's they don't have to pay to play. And then on to NCAA.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, if you were to add another rink, would you fill it?
I think so, but the business model might not tell you that, just because there's not a lot of history to go off, because there's not a lot of rinks here. But ice time is tough to get. A city like Newcastle, like, we're smaller, but if you put one in the big centers, like Melbourne, have seen a new rink go in there last year, and that rink is really thriving, and there's another rink getting built down there also. So I think yes, and it's a very supportive community here. But if a businessman was just to look at the numbers, it'd be risky.
Well, you know what? That's pretty much all the time we have for this episode today. Thank you for tuning in with us, and you know what? Make sure you subscribe to our Megapix Media channel so you will never miss an episode. And also, you can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram. We have content almost every day. So thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you guys soon.